All right, my wonderful students. So we are on to terms and connectors. These are, I think, the best way to navigate, to search within the either Lexis or Westlaw environment, especially when you're searching for cases. It does vary a little bit if you're searching for secondary sources as opposed to cases. And here's why, just very broad conceptual. Um, Whenever you're searching for something, you're searching frequently for words that were used by the author, whether it's someone who wrote a case opinion, a judge, or someone who wrote a law review article, like a professor or a law student who does law review. Those folks, as a group, just very broadly, write differently. Judges write differently from academics and students. And that's a very broad generalization. And I don't say it's not a disparagement or a criticism by any means. It's just you're going to find emphasis on different terminology, different words. And even within those groups, obviously, people are going to write. Some judges write more formally, and some write more informally, and it depends on the writing. If a judge is writing in an order on a motion in a case at the trial court level, they're going to write a lot less, and they're going to write a lot more informally than a judge who's writing an appellate decision, authoring the appellate decision for the 11th Circuit or something. So just understand that as a concept, groups write differently. And then obviously within those groups, folks write differently. But when you're trying to find a case or a law review article, but really a case, you need to sort of be putting yourself in the shoes of the judge who's writing. And so I'll give you an example. If you were searching for a case that says that a particular type of search is a type of search that requires a warrant, you might informally, as you're talking to a friend or something, and say, hey, they really needed a warrant. They really should have gotten a warrant. Well, gotten and needed maybe, but gotten is not going to show up in a lot of cases, unless it's a quote from someone saying, I should have gotten a warrant, right? More likely what is going to show up in a decision is obtain or secure a warrant, right? Because those are the terms that the judge is going to use. Are they, we talk about legal writing and the way that lawyers write and sometimes how they talk. Is it stilted? Is it old timey? Where heretofore, wherewithal, whereas, like, yeah, a little bit. But number one, that's how judges write a lot of times. So at least when we're searching, we should write that way. Should we write in plain English more often? Yeah, for sure. And when we're writing to our clients, or whoever they may be, should we, endeavor to write in a way that is more widely understood? Yeah, absolutely. But is it a good idea to then use sort of more casual language in our legal research input? No, because you're not going to get as many hits. So let me pull up Lexis, what they call Nexus Uni. I'm never going to get that right. And here is the platform here. And I'm going to type in this case site. So if you have a case site and you're searching in Lexis or Westlaw, you can just type the site in. I would leave the case party names out, because that's sometimes just going to cause more confusion. And frequently, if you just type in the citation, the case is just going to come up. This is something you might do if you know a case exists and you want to read it, review it, and see if there are any citing references and if it's been overturned. And that might be a case that you know of internally from your office or your colleagues. And this will happen to you in your first couple of years of practice. They'll say, hey, go pull the McCorkle decision. And you'll say, oh, okay, the McCorkle decision. Do you have a site for that? And they'll say, yeah, let me dig it up. And they look in a brief and they say, here you go. And you get 252 Southern 3rd 603. Well, 252 Southern 3rd is the 252nd volume of the Southern 3rd Reporter series. And it starts at page 603. And it's this case, Clark versus McCorkle. I'm just using this as an example. And in Clark versus McCorkle, you put the site in, you pull the case, you read the case, and you're off to the races. You can find other cases that have cited Clark versus McCorkle. Let's see if there is there's no subsequent appellate history, and there is one citing decision. So you might say, okay, let's see what this other decision has said about Clark. And this paragraph here is going to be probably the one that discusses Clark, or at least the first one. And you go into that and you're down the rabbit hole, right? And here's the highlighted section that talks about, it says it's a cite to Clark versus McCorkle. It's got a parenthetical. Okay, great. But what if you don't know? Well, let me say this. You may also use this format of typing in the case cite if you get a case used against you by an opposing party. They say the Jones v. Smith case says blah. And so your client, our client, let's say we work on the same team, our client loses the motion. Well, we might want to look at the case that they're citing because we want to verify that it checks all of the boxes of being what they say it is. Lawyers are advocates. I want to try to be diplomatic about this. So there's a lot of criticism of the profession, and some of it is well-deserved. And one of the criticisms is that lawyers are liars and that they will do anything to win. They'll bend the rules or they'll break the rules. And that is sometimes true, unfortunately. And I don't like that about the profession. And I am embarrassed of that portion of the profession. Not for my own personal ego or anything like that or reputation, but because it's wrong. And we know it's wrong. And the lawyers who do those things know it's wrong. So we're not going to be those lawyers. Those lawyers get caught and it does not end well. So what we are going to do is be honest. And when we cite cases, we're going to be honest about their import, about their effect. But when someone cites a case, an emotion against us, we want to verify what they're saying is true. And it doesn't just mean that their quote from the case is accurate, although that's important, but some other things that are sort of subtle uses of cases, we want to verify. Is it in our jurisdiction such that it is binding, or is it merely persuasive? If it's merely persuasive, we should highlight that and explain that to our judge. Does it fit our scenario factually, or is there a big fact or the absence of a big fact in the case being cited that our case either has or doesn't have that makes them distinguishable, different? Look back at the distinguishment video, which I actually don't know if I posted, so I will post it now if I haven't. Is it still good law? Has it been overturned, overruled? Has some big aspect of the law changed since that decision came out? If the decision is from 1988, there's a chance that some section of the law has changed such that it impacts the case, but it won't appear as a reversal because no one ever explicitly reversed the case. That does happen. There are remnants of cases that exist for decades that have never been explicitly overturned because it's never come up. And frankly, it may not ever come up because the law has changed, and why would anyone raise that? So we can talk more about that. It's a little bit higher level research stuff, but I want you all to know that that's the setting under which you're going to be doing this. But more frequently, you're not going to have a case citation because you don't know what the case law is. You just know what your issue is. And so let's say here, our case is we represent an individual who was arrested for DUI, and they were arrested for DUI because the officer smelled an odor of alcohol after a traffic stop. And so we go and meet our client, and the client says, yeah, I don't think they should have been allowed to arrest me, or they didn't have probable cause, something like that. And you need to do some research to figure out, was the odor of alcohol enough for the officer to arrest the client? Let's say those are the only facts that we have. And so in order to do that, we want to go and find out if there are cases that have, based on those facts alone, blessed the arrest, essentially. So the arrest was legal, legitimate, valid, permissible, or not. And we may also want to find cases where there are additional facts where the court said it was the odor of alcohol plus swerving, weaving, glassy, bloodshot eyes, whatever the case may be, some additional fact that was enough. And the likelihood, just so you know, the likelihood of a court drawing such a fine line is pretty low. Most courts use sort of a totality of the circumstances, reasonableness standard. And so it's not always so if you have these, here's 10 boxes, and if you can check 2 of them or 3 of them, then you have enough. And if you only check 1, you don't have enough. That's pretty rare. But even that being said, we still are going to be searching for cases where the distinction, the differentiation is made, so we can make an argument on that front. Just because the line is not so clear doesn't mean we don't have a job to do, and that our job doesn't involve actually going in and pulling these cases, finding these cases, and then constructing an argument from them. So here I'm going to go in to legal US, and then I'm going to select Florida cases. I have all available dates on, and I want to search for cases where our client has, or where someone has been arrested for DUI, and it was based on the odor of alcohol. So what I think a lot of folks do, a lot of students do when they first start out, is they just kind of start typing, and they'll type something like, can the police arrest my client for DUI because the officer smelled alcohol? If I can type. Okay. And that's, I think, pretty comfortably, I can say, I think that's most students' natural inclination in the beginning. And I get it, because that's truthfully, it's kind of how we operate with Google and a lot of search engines. And it feels like this is a search engine, I should be able to do that. The difficulty, the challenge is when you enter this in, the search engine doesn't have any way of prioritizing one word over the other. And the word "the" is like the most common article in all of human, English speech and writing. So it appears twice. There are some terms in here that are going to get us some good results, but there's not really a strategy here. There's no differentiation. There's no prioritization. There's no emphasis. And so if we go and search this, it's going to probably give us a pretty large search result. And it looks like we've got 192 cases. Okay. So that's a lot of cases. Not terrible, frankly, better than I thought. And I will say this, the search engines are starting to use AI, and this result is much better than it would have been 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, you probably would have gotten thousands of cases. I think that the strength of the algorithm in both Lexis and Westlaw is such that this returns a much better result than it used to. In fact, in some, I know Westlaw does this, and I know Lexis, the sort of commercial professional version, will sometimes have a box that pops up here that says, did you mean this, or are you looking for this? And it will kind of guide you based on what it thinks you're trying to do with this string of words. That's great, but we don't want to rely on that. We want to be, we want to control our own destiny. We want to take control of the search terms using terms and connectors. And so I will share these with you all in the next module. But one thing to know is there are these terms and connectors. There's this PDF, and this is for Lexis. There's a similar one for Westlaw. I think it's less helpful. I think Lexis's PDF here is much more comprehensive. It explains all the different terms and connectors. And so let's go into our Florida, all available dates. And then rather than can the police arrest my client for DUI because the officer smelled alcohol, let's do traffic stop and smell and alcohol and arrest and DUI. So if we search this way, we are telling the search engine, find all cases in Florida for all available dates where the terms traffic stop and the word smell and the word alcohol and the word arrest and the word DUI all appear, or I guess the acronym DUI all appear in that case. This is better than what we had before because this uses terms and connectors, and this is an ampersand, this symbol right here. The ampersand means and it's a shortcut. You can also type "and" in all caps outside the quotations, and that will get you the same result. And they're interchangeable, so you can use some ampersand, some "and." Most people, kind of pick one. But all that means is it's this word and this word and this word and this word and this word that appear in the case. This is better than our string here, except there still isn't really a differentiation between these terms, and there's no relationship between these terms. So, for example, and this is probably uncommon, but if there's a case where traffic stop and alcohol and arrest and DUI appear with the word smell, but the word smell refers to something different, not the smell of alcohol, and I'll just isolate here. Having smell and alcohol, it doesn't tell the search engine what the relationship between those two terms is, whether they should appear near each other or with each other, or if it's just saying that someone was stopped, and again, this is a silly example, probably unlikely, but someone was stopped for a traffic stop and they had a bottle of alcohol. That's different from our case, so that's not super helpful, right? And they were arrested for DUI and they have no sense of smell. I don't know. And that was I don't know, defense, or it came up in the case, or it's a fact or something. That's going to throw our search results off a little bit. Because smell and alcohol in our mind, our conceptualization of this should have a relationship, but in the way that we've constructed this search, there is no relationship. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to just put it in the search so that we can see if we get a better result yield than 192. We get 16. 16 is pretty good. Now you'll notice, again, I'm going to give credit to the system because I think the system's doing a lot of the legwork here. The first case that comes up is the same in both. State versus Emma Crane, maybe. So, if we're looking for just one case, then, that's appearing for both. So it's probably highly relevant. The problem is we're infrequently looking for just one case. Usually cases, you have to take multiple cases to build out an argument. It's rare that you get one case that solves all your problems. So let's go back in all available dates, Florida cases. Let me drop in the same search terms and connectors that we had before, but this time I'm going to do plus S. Now, what plus S means is that the term smell will appear in the same sentence as the word alcohol. So that makes sense. If we are wanting to deal with the smell of alcohol, then smell is going to appear in the same sentence. In fact, I think it's just before the word alcohol in the same sentence. That's what plus S means, is the first word appears before the second word in the same sentence. If we did /S, that would mean that smell smell is in the same sentence as alcohol, but there's no order preference that you're telling the search engine. P is similar. Plus P means smell comes in this before alcohol in the same paragraph, and /P means smell comes before, or smell and alcohol appear in the same paragraph, but without regard for the order of things. So let's try plus S. I don't know if this is going to change our search results at all over the 16, but it gets us to 12. You see up here 12, and that'll appear right there. There we go. So that's pretty good. 12 cases is a manageable number of cases, in my opinion. You can go through and you can read them. You can take a look at the summaries that are given here. Another thing you can do is, this is the full view. You can I think most of the time they're set sort of at a medium level of description. I like the more description, the greater degree of detail, because that allows me to see. And then I think there's a preview section which will actually pull the case up. Yeah, and you can just kind of skim through it without having to leave the page. That's helpful in case you're at a firm where you're paying sort of per click or something like that. These usually are not incurring charges, but this is, I think, a superior search term setup, search term and connector setup, because we have isolated the terms and we have used some connectors to be more specific. And here you'll notice an example of that, the smell of alcohol. Now, two things. One, the terms. Some courts will, obviously, judges write how they write, and they might use odor of alcohol. So if that's the case, what we're going to want to do is or odor. And so now what this is going to do is it's going to give us smell or odor plus alcohol appears in the same sentence before alcohol. So let's see if that gives us an even, it's probably going to give us more cases, frankly. There we go. We got 44 cases. So just the addition of odor has given us a greater, so if we need to expand our search, we can add that in. That's going to give us a broader swath of cases to work from, to work down. That is the idea of terms. And then for connectors, you might say to yourself, well, why don't I just put smell of alcohol? It's a good question. And there's two problems or two difficulties with just writing the phrase like smell of alcohol. Number one, of will sometimes appear, it'll kind of give you a hash error. Let me see if I can generate one really quickly. Whenever the search engine sees a phrase that uses an article, I think of is an article, but of, and, the, a, to, those terms will start to throw the search engine off, because even though this is in parentheses, you'll sometimes, when you get your search results back, it'll look like this. And you'll say, why is there a pound sign? What it's saying is that it can't tell if of, I don't know why, but it can't tell if of is being used as a connector or a term. And frankly, it's used so often that it throws off the search, or it's too narrow, smell of alcohol. That will sometimes, and that's a good indicator. The pound sign is a good indicator that you're getting a hash error. It doesn't mean you won't get results. You will. I'll show you. This will probably be okay. And frankly, I don't know if you get hash errors in your, well, it gives us 544 results. So it's less helpful, right? Which seems weird because we know that smell of alcohol appears in one of these cases when we used our terms and connectors. So that's one challenge. And I'm not sure why it's going so broad. Here's another though. When we do, when you limit it to smell of alcohol, what you've now done is eliminated other instances where the court may be talking about smelling alcohol, but in a different context. Here's a good example. When we did the smell plus S alcohol, look at this one. We had several witnesses who said he didn't smell like alcohol. That's different from smell of alcohol, but it's the same concept, and that's actually what we want. In fact, that might be something that really helps us. Now, this is a news article, to be fair, but that might be something that really helps us if there's a case and the court says, look, because of the weight of the evidence, the other witnesses who say the person didn't smell like alcohol, and in your case, you have a client who maybe has witnesses that say he didn't smell like alcohol, or someone at the jail, I don't know, then you could use that as a supporting feature. Again, if it's a case, not just necessarily a news article. So, and a lot of these are news articles, so you got to make sure we always go down to the case, but and I think I know why this one went the way that it went. I think I did not limit it to, yep. So that's my fault. And that happens. We want to make sure we always are, and there's a way to set your favorites. It doesn't always stick. Meaning you could set like Florida case law as your favorite. I'll show you how to do that in a second, but it doesn't always stick. And so I always have to kind of go back and recheck that. And here, look, when we do it, smell of alcohol, it gives us 9 cases. That's pretty good. I mean, just be aware when your phrase includes anything other than when your string of words includes anything other than a natural language phrase like traffic stop, not stop of traffic or stopped the traffic. That can throw off a search result and give you a hashing error. Let me go back to the Lexis Uni main page. I'll show you how to do a favorites. You select your case that you like, hit the star here. It's going to allow you to set that as a favorite filter. Set it here, and boom, now I've got my favorite filter. Whether that actually sticks and comes up, who knows? I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. I'm sure being signed in, like formally signed in, I don't know if we're able to do that. That may help, but and I'm going to go through just a couple of the other terms and connectors. We covered and, we covered or, we covered ampersand, which is the same thing as and. We covered the quotes, which is putting quotes around the terms or phrases. We covered /p, +p, /s, and +s. So 2 that I want to cover are the exclamation point and the percent symbol. So the percent symbol is but not. And I use the percent symbol pretty good amount when I have too many results and I want to narrow them. So let's use this as an example. Can the police arrest my client for DUI because the officer smelled alcohol? I have 192 cases. I'm going to find the least relevant case that appears like pretty early. And let me see if I can find something that is throwing us off. So it looks like this case down here involves potentially a warrant. And so let's hope that this works. So I'm going to go into here. Now you have an option now to exclude, but what I would normally do is either go in down here or at the top and say, okay, I want this. Can the police arrest my client for DUI because the officer smelled alcohol? But I don't want cases where there is a warrant involved because we don't have a warrant. We have a traffic stop. So %sign warrant is going to say, give us all the cases that respond to this. And ideally you would have search terms, but let me try this. See, I'm going to try to find something that's going to give us a lot of case results. Okay, so we get 2,169 results when we type in alcohol and arrest. And let's find some cases that we would want to exclude. Let's say our client didn't take a breath test, a breathalyzer. And so we want to exclude any case where there's a breathalyzer result, because that won't be, it's not relevant to our result. And maybe it's going to narrow the 2,196 cases. So now I'm going to do, I could type in breathalyzer, but there's a few different ways that breath is going to come up. And it's in this setting, it's going to almost always be in the context of the machine, a breathalyzer or intoxilizer. So I'm also going to do intoxilizer just because that's an industry term, and I think it's going to give us a good narrowing. And hopefully I spelt it right. I think I did. Let's try the search. 2169, see if we get less results. 43. All right. So when we do but not breath and but not intoxilizer, it is going to narrow our cases down to 43. But for some reason, it only included those, and that is not good. That's the exact opposite of what we wanted. So perhaps the percent symbol is not working in Nexus Uni. Okay, so if we do it that way, it does narrow our cases from 2169 down, and it looks like we don't have any that have breath or intoxilizer. So for now, I would say if you're using Lexis, try the but not rather than the percent symbol. I can tell you the percent symbol works in the version of Lexis I have, but maybe not here, or it may be just the way I entered it. But you can see, I think, the utility of this, being able to exclude certain words because, and I'll give you another example. And I'll give you an example in conjunction with the exclamation point. So let's say we're doing alcohol and arrest, and we want we want a breathalyzer, but we don't know if it's going to be a breath. The phrase is going to be breath test or breathalyzer or breathe into the machine, something like that. So rather than trying to figure out which of those it is, we can just type breath exclamation point. And what this is going to return is breath, as well as breathe, because it has an E at the end, I think, and breathalyzer, because it has Elizer at the end. Anytime you put exclamation point at the end of a word or part of a word, it's going to find every version of that word with any sequence of letters after it. And another sort of better example is contract. If I'm searching for any number of, and these are very broad, these tend to yield very broad search results, just be aware of that. But if I'm searching for a lot of different versions of that, I might do contract exclamation point, and that's going to give us contract, like a legal document, like a binding agreement. It's going to give us contractor, like a subcontractor or general contractor. It's going to give us independent contractor probably. So just know that this is a really good way of, when you know that the court may use words in different settings, like an ED or an ING at the end, the exclamation point is a great way to do that. And it's going to give us a little bit more flexibility, I think. So if we do breath here, look at breath test. I didn't even think about that. Breath test is one. Breath alcohol. That's a hyphenated term that this court apparently uses multiple times. So, I mean, and this is another way of learning the terminology that courts are using. I know that that's not necessarily the point of what we're doing here, but those are some of the terms and connectors. I think those are the major ones. There are some even more complex sort of connectors that you can use to get within a certain number of words, or a certain I guess, certain number of words within each other. And so these are really great tools. These are tools that I think you should mess around with, practice with, try out, see what you can find. And the more you use terms and connectors, the better your skill set's going to become. So this is our session on terms and connectors. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Send me a message in web courses. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week. Thanks.